All right. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. This is a new season of Runners Roundtable, and it's going to be focusing on conversations with coaches. And today, or right now, I have Jessica with me. And Jessica is someone that I actually first found out about you through Just Jess. And it was the frozen, I think it was Crazy Elvis was the flavor.
Yes, yes, the
Oh,
goodness. Oh yeah.
yeah, and it was from that, like my driving radius is really small, but I would make sure to drive to iRun, which is a store here in Miami, just to pick those up. Like I wouldn't get anything else, no shoes,
Right.
nothing else, just that.
Like call ahead and make sure it's
Yeah,
there, just so
and
I'm not
figuring out.
driving.
Yeah, because that happened to me one time where I went and they had the samples in the freezer, and I was like, "That's the one I want," and they're like, "We don't have that one." Or they had it and then it sold out. So I'm like, okay, let me shift there. So that's where I was first introduced to you. And then I think maybe when did you run Chicago for the first time?
That was just last year,
Okay.
21.
So
Mhm.
maybe it was New York City because I feel like I did my first marathon maybe around the similar time that you did yours. So that's where I was like, okay, she runs too. So not only is she creating this delicious goodness, but she's also
Yeah.
a runner as well. So before I continue to talk, tell us about yourself and if you can give us your running history and then also your coaching history. What led you to become a coach? What got you into running in the first place?
Sure. Thank you for having me and having this discussion. We had a couple of, the running community is pretty small for Miami. So at some point, somewhere, if you're on here and you're on the social platforms and you're going to run into each other in some fashion. So the running for me, I had my when I met you, I actually had my hand in a bunch of pots, and as of now, so much of that has kind of organically branched out, and now the pandemic kind of set the tone a lot for the run coaching, which I had been doing for 9 years already, because I started running in New York City, and I was going through pretty much a messy, like traumatic breakup, I would say. And running kind of found me. I would walk around Central Park for hours and hours. I was in college. I was 20, between 20 and 21. And then, just that break of, I'm going to run this block. I would see so many runners out there, and that's the hub. And running just became, long story short, my time. It was, back then, and even up until I probably met you when I actually engaged on social media. I was very anti social media. I was already like 34 or something when I actually opened my account, because I wanted to start this small business of, making healthy ice cream protein treats. So I was really dabbling in an uncomfortable arena at the time, and that's how I got to meet you and other people in the running community, because before that it was just my personal thing. I didn't want to share it with anyone. I didn't want to run with anyone. I was like already a personal trainer at the time, working for pretty much full time. After I had moved to Miami and had my son, I took a couple of years, but it's been 10 years straight up now. So that avenue kind of opened that door, because I found the indoor treadmill and the gym community, the fitness community in New York, when I got really sick of the cold, frigid, and I just didn't want to give up my run. So, I would go on the treadmill in the gym, and that was about it, and really didn't really dabble in any other avenue of fitness until I did. So when I did that, and then came to work full time. I was at the time working at the Miami Beach JCC. I've worked at Crunch here in Miami. And anyways, once my son was like 2 years old, I decided to just embark on that more full time. And my running actually took a back seat. And then I started to acquire one-on-one clients outside of the gym, and I would, go to their homes, and running is just so much who I am. It was my time of day, always made time for it, and it was totally solo mission. So when I started to work with other athletes, it just organically became something they were interested in. They knew I ran. It wasn't something I could even hide. I didn't even run my first race, which wasn't, it was a half marathon in 2014 was my first race, and that was the Miami half. And I just remember my eyes being like, I was blown away. I couldn't believe I was not partaking in this for so many years, running already 12 years and not doing any races, no Garmin watch, no aspect of, pace, time. I just was always running by feeling. I always ran with music. So stepping outside of my comfort zone and having to use my running experience with my clients, because the fitness world, especially in Miami, maybe now running, I don't know about you, but it's become very pop culture. It's very cool. It's very in trend right now. And it has been, I would say, over probably the past 5 years, it kind of just like took this big, ginormous step into the spotlight. Whereas before it was kind of like a dorky thing. I feel like you were like a running nerd and you knew all about your specific stuff and your gear and your shoes. And I would just go to the same ASIC store on the Upper West Side and buy my same sneakers, same pair, year after year after year, one pair for the whole year. Now you can't get through more than like 300 miles.
I wish I could have one pair for the whole
totally
year.
taking advantage of the situation, so that's a whole nother podcast, I imagine. Anyway, so when I started running with my personal training clients, I would say, okay, I'm going to do this class, but I'm going to train for this marathon. So, I want to run with you. I want to run with you. I want to run with you. So always that interest. So that led me to running with groups. I was pushed into, there was a woman that I worked with, and she also was a marathoner, and she would teach classes at the JCC. And she was like, hey, you really need to be running with this group that I run. Like, I wasn't competitive. I wasn't competitive with others, and I wasn't competitive with myself with running. I just did it for the pure love of it. So I was like, okay, it was really, really uncomfortable for me. Believe it or not, I'm not really social. I'm pretty much like an introverted extrovert. Like, I'm extroverted in certain scenarios with certain people, but all in all, I'm pretty much like a homebody. I like to keep to myself. It's just the way that I have always been. So stepping into these bigger groups was really like uncomfortable for me. So I did it anyway, Saturday morning. And I was like, whoa, these people are so fast, and I was like, got a taste of it, and I loved it. I was like, okay, and then there'd be somebody else saying, hey, you need to do this and you need to do that, and my ears started, my head started spinning. So of course I did sign up. Actually, I started going to those Saturday long runs with this group because I decided after that I had done like 2 halves and I was hooked to the half marathon. I mean, it took me maybe 4 more years before I even ran a 5K. It was like half marathon.
The longer distances.
Yeah, I was in it for the long haul. So I did sign up for the Miami full the following year. That was 2015. And my goal was just to finish. I still didn't have a running watch. I was running off of feeling and then also with people. So I was getting a more sense of pace versus effort when I had always run on effort. I always knew that I could run for hours and hours and be just fine. So when I started to kind of push myself outside of my physical comfort zone, I also was awakened to the prospect of being competitive within myself and around these other super faster runners that seemed like they just had much more race experience. And I was still coaching my private clients. And I had at the time like 3, and I felt confident with that. I was never, I'm certified in many things, but I never took in a formal running coach certification. I, self-taught. I had a mentor who kind of she coached me just gently into my half marathon because she was the one who kind of catapulted my fitness career here in Miami. She's 20 years my senior, so her experience with, she was like a 3-time, 4-time Ironman black belt, creator of like cardio, kickboxing when, at the time being a strong, fast, competitive female was not so common. So when she took me under her wing, she was really, like grooming me for this. And she would always tell me in my back of my ear, like, you need to be racing. And I didn't even know what the hell that meant. I was like, whatever. I was always pretty athletic and I enjoyed the grind of a good workout, a hard run. It was just part of my routine. But she always was in my ear, like the first one pushing me. She's the one who set me up at this play at the JCC where my career in fitness and running blossomed. So a lot of that became because of the mentorship. So I have to say that was like a huge thing that in my early 20s, mid 20s, 25 to 30 was like a prime time where I didn't even realize the education I was getting. It was like on a daily basis, 5 times a week, whether it was running, biking, weightlifting, teaching me how to do pull-ups. Like I was unafraid at the time, and that's a little bit sacred. I think that ignorance is bliss.
Oh yeah.
1000%. Right now we just have so much data, so much access. We can compare our runs, compare ourselves, compare, and you can like get dizzy with that, So that slowly blossomed, and I was very careful at first with the coaching because I had a pretty full plate with teaching, with personal training, and then run coaching. These are very different approaches with people. So you have completely different people, different personalities, different goals than you do someone who's like, hey Jess, I want you to train me. I have this wedding. This is your typical, I can put in a box, female and or couples. I train a lot of married couples who they have this 1 hour before the day starts, like 6 a.m. I can show up and they can have this time together, work out, and you see this marriage and relationship blossom into this wonderful thing that they didn't have before because of this hour they're spending together. I love
that. Yeah.
So for me, that was like such a special thing, and I wanted to make sure that I could still give myself of that to them wholeheartedly because I felt like that's really where my gifts were. Like that was once I connected with people, I'm definitely, I don't know. I mean, even some of my clients have said like I love you or I hate. I'm like I'm very black and white. Like I'm either you love me or you're like this is not for me. Like there's no like she's okay or whatever. We're kind of like all in, and I have relationships with these clients for a decade now, and I'm very grateful for that. And it's spun up some great opportunities also, and I've met some great other clients through them as well. So as the running proceeded, I was like, well, I want a running coach, like I want to learn more. Like I know what I know, but I know there's so much more. So naturally, I was like, okay, I want this guy. He owns iRun, Kobe. He's the guy that's got all these people. They're super fast, and I need to prove that I'm good enough, for this group. And at first he just like turned me down straight up, like, well, can you run 8:20 for 16 miles? Like that was our first conversation. And I realized what I was asking because this is somebody this is their life's work, and he's never seen me run, like Hector has, who I've run many, many miles with, and this other person has never seen me run. He, operates and writes the workouts for Workout Monday. Those of you who know, it's like pretty intense, but well organized workout every Monday night. It's been going on for 12 years here in Miami. Anyways, I had never even shown up there. And he was like, can you run 16 miles at an 8:20 pace? Because at the time, my BQ, I had set in my head, I ran my second marathon. That was New York, which is when I think I met you, because I was really in the works of raising charity funds for that race, which was my second marathon, and the Just Goodness. So my hands were full. I had a full plate. And I realized after that New York, like, hey, I think I got something here. Like, I think I can go for this BQ. Meanwhile, I had run like 3:58, which to me, I mean, it's really incredible how relative you would say fast is. It's such a personal, running is so different for everyone that as a coach, if you don't approach the runner and train the athlete, you're going to be stuck in this like windmill of a cycle of like chasing numbers. And that's really, for what I've found now, that's not really where you're going to have success with as a coach or as a runner. So that relationship needs to be pretty clear. This is why I had said to you when you asked me to do this, I was like, well, I only coach in person, meaning I don't do virtual things. I started the virtual thing when the pandemic started, and that still continues with 3 times a week workouts, which is a huge strength regimen that has kind of compounded on the run coaching, and those clients do intertwine, because getting into the next piece of coaching is that once I was being coached, I had realized so many things, that even though that your coach is a tool, your Garmin is a tool, your running shoes are a tool, your nutritionist, if that's the route you want to go and you're trying to, BQ, and you have to get up and, cross all these lines and dot all these I's, then you're going to go for it, because it's usually going to take an immense amount of dedication and effort to accomplish a marathon personal goal. Even if that is a sub-4, which was mine in New York, and then I was like blown away that I could do it, so I wanted to reach for more. And that's not the case for everyone. Some people want to complete the marathon, start the marathon. I think that getting to the start of a marathon, the start line, is the first huge accomplishment, because most people don't get there. People get injured. It's a lot of mileage. If you can't, you got to figure out, how do I balance, my life? We're not out here, we're amateurs, we're having fun, it's our hobby. Some people take it more seriously than others. So you need to know who you're dealing with, and what the goal is. And then from there, that coach, whoever it may be, is a tool. The same rules apply if you break it down and strip away the people and the coaches and the labels. It's still run, easy, long, short, increase mileage, you adapt the mind, you adapt the body, and then you play with very little. I've done half marathon programs for athletes all the way up till about 7 years old. And, the body is not going to tolerate the same thing that you and I can tolerate. This is just something that you can't deny when it comes to running. You can be an exceptional athlete. I'm sure there's, men and women, 20 plus years older than me who are faster than me, but that we don't know what their history is. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So
Yep.
if you coach the athlete instead of the numbers, that's pretty much my straightforward coaching philosophy for the most part. So, I can let you get 2 words in.
No, you're good. I love hearing all of this, because it's I asked you about your evolution, and it's so interesting to see how so much of it is intertwined. And and I usually ask people like how they get into coaches. I've had a few run coaches on the podcast doing other episodes talking about different things. And I love how it always starts, for the most part, with people. It's like just a genuine love and curiosity for the sport and how else you can get involved in it. So to see you here go from, you even said it, you were non-competitive with yourself, with others, and then it's definitely tapping into a different level of yourself, not only as an athlete, but as a coach. And I appreciate two of the things that you said so much is your coach is a tool, because that's the truth, right? Like a coach is only as good as the athlete, I feel, or maybe that might be a stretch, right? Like that might be a stretch, but I feel like if the athlete isn't going to commit to what the coach is offering, then you're really not going to get much out of it. So that's like one thing that I love, that just even seeing it and you compared it to like your shoes and your watch. And I truly, I really love that perspective, because it really does put the onus on the individual runner. Like you get out of this relationship what you're putting into it. I think that's kind of where I'm hearing a lot of what you're saying. And I'm like, yes. And then also and this is probably just because of where I am in my own running evolution, the whole idea of train the athlete or you'll get in a cycle of chasing numbers. And that is just so beautiful, because I mean, you've ran enough. You've seen progress within your own running, and sometimes progress isn't necessarily connected to the numbers, right? Like sometimes progress is more connected to how you handled the disappointment of a race, how you handled yourself when a race got challenging. So I love that those things are being brought up, because I wrote down here, it's like, how has running evolved in general, right? Like that's such a big question, because I feel, and maybe you can kind of tell me if you've been picking up on the same thing, where when I started running, similar to you, it was 10 years ago. That's when I was like, okay, I'm going to do this like for real. Before then it was, oh, there's a treadmill in the gym. Let me go do that. Like, oh, the master is Exactly. And at that time, at least when I started running, I got into the sport because of my daughters, and I really wanted to be a healthy role model for them. And in the beginning, everything was so new and I didn't know what I was doing. And so all I knew to go by were the numbers, right? Like that was all I had, where it was like, oh, I'm growing as a runner because my 5K time got faster or my half marathon time got faster. And the longer I'm in this sport, I realize that it's not just the numbers. Like the numbers are still very, very motivating. But when I think of what do I need to do to be in this sport long term, how do I need to stay healthy?
It's a long life. It's a lifelong sport. And I think like once you've been doing it for a decade or so, you realize that's the goal.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, and it's not to say that I don't have time goals. But it's to say that my grip on those time goals has loosened, because I feel again, so like when I first started running, I felt like everything was about numbers. And like, if you want to run fast, you've got to run fast. Like, I feel like that's when I started, that was it. And now I feel like the pendulum has swung, not so much in the other direction, but maybe a more neutral direction, where it's like, no, if you want to run fast, you actually have to slow down, right? Like you actually have to take your ego out. And I know you shared something about this in your stories. I feel like maybe a few weeks ago, where you're like, I have to take my ego out in order to be okay with the numbers on my watch, or something to that effect. And it was, you were talking about
like if you don't have to truly run well, you have to have enough confidence in your fitness to run slow.
Yes,
you know,
that's exactly what it was.
Is that. And I think that when we first embark on those like numbers or speeds, or I'm going to be faster in this race, so I'm going to now run, let's like say I'm like, I remember 8:30 being like, I was like everything. I was like running 18 milers. And I realized, you know what, this is like way too fast for what it's not making you. And so you have to take that back seat and like let the runner or the coach, like someone, that's where good coaching can come in and kind of put things into perspective for you. Because as you know, I mean, runners are stubborn. Like they're just a different breed, especially if they're going to take on training for like a half or a full marathon. Because they're already strong-willed because you need to be disciplined to get your runs done and live your life. So there is similarities with people who use coaches, are coached, and do marathons. I'm just gonna put that out there. You're just you're a different breed. So
Yeah,
to convince me of running slower to get faster was like something I had to see for myself. You weren't gonna tell me anything. I was like,
well, and I think that's also, and you mentioned this earlier, you said having a sense of pace versus effort. And I think that's part of it, part of what you're talking about too, because yes, runners are incredibly stubborn. I think we can be oftentimes very bullheaded. We're like, nope, that's the goal. We're going to go for it. And it does take a little bit to kind of pull back the reins and be like, okay, but what is actually serving you? What is actually going to help you be the strong, gritty runner that you need to become race day, right? And I feel like that's a lot of what you're talking about. It's not only it's coaching the individual athlete, but I feel what I'm getting from you is also just, and I think this is a big part of the coaching relationship too. It's like giving also the person the tools to connect to who they are as a runner themselves. Like, can you tell the difference between your efforts? Not like if we take the watch away, can you tell? And that's something, at least for myself, I always, when I'm running and I'm like, okay, can I guess my pace? Can I guess what I'm running and have it be in alignment without looking at my watch just based on feel? Yeah. And I think that's also just a big part of where the coach comes in. And I guess this is a question, I'll go into the next question then. So if I were coming to you and I say, hey, I'm interested in coaching, what is the conversation that you have with people? What is your coaching style? Do you give people their plans? Like, in general, do you do like a 12-week training plan and you give it to a person? Or is it one of those things where they get the training plan from you weekly? What's kind of the communication that happens with you as a coach so that people, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry to cut you finish.
No, I was just going to say, so that anyone who listens to this they can get a preview of what it would be like to start this conversation with you and work with you.
So I used to, just like when I started taking one-on-one personal training clients, I used to say yes to everyone. I figured that the more experience, the most cost efficient was the way to gain the experience. Now people are like, no, I want an experienced blah, 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 or how long, but you just don't get that experience unless you're going to say yes. So I was constantly saying yes. It didn't matter who you were. Nothing was personal. If you asked me, and just same with my training, I never, when it comes to the personal running coaching and training, I don't advertise it because I don't want to allure a client that doesn't look for me. So I'd rather be sought out. Now, for that to happen, it's usually, believe it or not, it's funny how social media works, because I've had some amazing clients running with great success that have found me on Instagram. Like they didn't even know me besides that platform. So I found that kind of interesting. But I think if you're authentic and true to what you are and what you say, when you do come to me in person, things do align as such. Anyways, that being said, I spent I would say a good solid 3 years once it was on the upswing, where I was like, okay, trying to juggle maybe more than 6 running clients. And I was like, yes, 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 yes. I was me personally trying to accommodate them, So if they were like, hey, every week my schedule changes. Hey, I travel for work, so I have to let you know, hey, I really need to know 2 weeks in advance because I have to try, my kid does, tournaments, so I'm going to be gone this weekend. So I was always trying to accommodate them because I felt like I took it on such a personal level. As that evolved, I realized I need to be more in sync with them as coach athlete. And I realized that's where we'd always bump heads if, the tables turned and, we just didn't work together anymore. So I always like to sit back and evaluate, okay, not where did I go wrong, but how can I be better? How can I be better service? Being a coach, being a trainer, you're constantly on all day, you're talking to people and you're teaching. So that teaching, to me, I need to know that you can understand the lingo, my language, that we in some level speak the same language, that you are open-minded to my ideas behind expectations. That's a big word. You want to be very clear. And I am now very clear with what their expectations are from me and my expectations from them if I take them on as a client, because it can be a really wonderful thing. And as it grew, I wanted to cultivate a team environment, culture. I wanted there was such an array of levels, but at the same time, I wanted them to know that I'm here for everyone. When we meet on a run or at the track a couple of times a month, and I had not seen them run before, I would be we would have an open-ended conversation, whether it be in person or on the phone before we continued with the coaching, and made all those clear. Like, are you open to, there's two things that I strongly require is some sort of strength training and some sort of recovery routine. What I've found with myself and with other athletes is that I want to set you up for success. Most of what I find is the runners that come to me have very specific personal goals. So I realize that, okay, this is what's happening. This is what you want. And to be honest, I don't really get very, what do you like?
Feel like I was like excited about that. I don't know. Like I'm hearing what you're saying and I'm like, oh, and you said it, right? So you're training the athlete. And I love that because it's like, you're like, no. If you're going to work with me, you have to see yourself as an athlete. And an athlete doesn't just run, right?
No.
Like an athlete does not just run. Yeah.
Like, if you want to be more lax and just like, hey, I want a 12-week half marathon running plan, I'm not the one for you. Like, I'll say that straight up. So it's definitely something that I think people want to embark on not longer. I don't do things like, oh, you have to commit 6 months. What I like to do is, because people change usually, or their ideals change. So I keep it on a month-to-month plan, and I send plans out every Sunday. So sometimes it would be for 2 weeks. And I've only just recently, in the last, we're usually on an email thread. Everyone gets their own. I don't send out everyone's plan to everyone. But if I have like a group announcement to make, or we're going to go to where I can be able to see everyone at once, as opposed to, I do also run individually, one-on-one with each runner at some point, several times. In the build up to a race, or I need to be with you. I need to see how you run, how you associate yourself to running, what might be holding you back. That is a huge thing. It's two of my athletes right now training for races are actually also running coaches. I'm coached as well. I need that perspective that's not me looking in the mirror. I want someone from the outside. I want their opinion because I trust them. Because I hear something that I might not always like what I hear. I don't want you to tell me like, great job, good job. I don't need like applause. I want truth. And I think that since I know what I want out of a coach, usually that's what is been attracted to me, meaning that my clients, my athletes, these runners, they are up for the game of figuring out, okay, they have this like goal A here, but you know, there's like the alphabet is A to Z. So maybe you can like go A, B, C, skip, you know, J, K, L, but really how many letters can you skip to get to Z? You know what I mean? Like you have to do the dance. So on that note, every person individually needs a little bit something different. And that's the fun part about the team culture, is that we can get to the track and practice different things like strides and form, and I can see them and give them that perspective. I can take a video of them running and they can see themselves from a different set of eyes. The support is always there, and once I realized that you can do so much more together than individually, I realized that that is a huge stepping stone and a growth spurt in a lot of their success. So I continued on that page and continued, and I really feel like this year, 2022, it's really been solidified, and whatever dead weight was there, kind of like the low-hanging fruit fell, and now we're like in this really great place of a great group. I'm like amazed at what some of them have been able to do, just not even by numbers, but by just simply like someone told them you could do it. You know, you need that person who believes in you and tell you the truth. You know, they know I'm not gonna say something that they want to hear, but I will also not hold back if I see some progress. If I'm running with them and I'm like, do you see now? You see how your foot is hitting the ground? You're like, I don't hear you anymore. Or do you have shin splints anymore? No, why? Because you're not heel striking anymore. So it's all these little mechanics and how the mind and the body interact with each other. And I think that mind muscle connection is super important. It's part of that line that I feel like I've this gap that starting to narrow between the fitness industry and the running world. And there was always this gap, but this gap is getting really small. And somewhere in this little fine lane is like, I picture me and you know, these athletes where we've kind of found this balance where we're able to learn from each other. I can mentor them into some of the careers that they're in, which, you know, they have extensive education far beyond what I have in, you know, physiology, anatomy, masters. You know, they have all these great accolades, and now they're able to connect with a community where someone is putting that experience behind their back. So now they can take all that with them and actually put it on the road, you know, put it in their programs, put it in their work, put it in their family life. And, you know, as they always say, and I truly believe that running is parallel to life, and so much of what you feel inside, you know, that dopamine fix, the adrenaline, all the good hormones that stimulate our brain, it really plays into their lives, their personal lives. And you just watching this human being evolve. And for me, I find tremendous fulfillment in that. It's also helped me kind of nudge me in the right direction with my goals and being more vulnerable with them so they can see, you know what, like I've made the mistake with runners and coaches and putting them on this pedestal.
Yep.
And then you get up close and personal and you're like, whoa, you're just a human being. Like you're not, you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
I want to humanize myself, even if they might look up to me for some reason, and put myself out there with them in the arena. Like I'm not just on the sidelines with my, with my timer and my whistle. I'm in there with them. I want to jump in a race with them when I can, and just kind of show them a little bit more than they might see on their own when you're stuck in your own head a little bit, which we've all been.
Yeah. I thank you for sharing all of that, because it really does. I was smiling to hear you, because I'm like, oh, wow. I don't know if you've realized this, but you've come full circle, right? Like you were the mentee at some point, and now you're in a position of being a mentor. So like, it's so beautiful to hear you, because as you were talking about the woman, who for 5 years was kind of pushing you, I'm like, oh, I wonder if she realizes that that's what she's doing now too. So it's, again, when we're talking about the athlete and the wholeness of them, it's like, oh, you're not just working with them on running, but you're working on them of this whole, like, running is parallel to life, of how do we fully embody the gains on the run so that you live that in everything else that you do. And it was just so beautiful to hear you say that. And I just wanted to point that out, because I'm like, I wonder if she's paused to reflect on like your own,
Totally.
as part of your evolution.
Constant. Yeah, it's a constant. I think that to really be some sort of teacher, you always have to be the student.
Yep.
The learning never ends, and we're just getting more and more information, and more data is being collected, and the evolution is constant. I get turned off by being stuck. Like I get frustrated more at staying either stagnant, not about, we're not talking like race numbers and stuff like that. I mean, just as a whole. Like if I'll tend to just walk away and drop everything and pick up something else that I feel might be holding me down. I know that I'm ready for growth. And if you're with me or you're a student of mine and you, like, I'm gonna be honest with you, like I'm doing this and you're more than welcome to come. But I'm not gonna make you comfortable by staying in those shallow waters. Like now we learned how to swim, so we're gonna go to the deep end. Like you can stay there. I'm not gonna judge you. This might be your journey, and that's great, but I'm going here. So, like you can,
Yeah.
it's like, so I found some comfort and confidence in that aspect of my career and this run coaching, where I know that it's a lot of my ways are very unconventional. I keep it where a dozen people now, and I'm like, that's where I feel good at. Maybe some people really like to continue the coaching with me, and some people like to jump aboard for a race, and that's all good. It's not something that you have to fully commit to for your entire life or an entire year. It could just service you for a short time. And I think that piece of it is really important, because with all the people who come in or come out, and me putting myself in situations that are uncomfortable or having hard conversations has helped me grow as an athlete, as a mom, as a business owner. I always thought like, wow, I would be about 30 years old and say, it would be just really cool if I could do this. I thought it almost out of grip. I didn't think that was something I could really, I saw it in the distance, but I just realized, okay, if the answer is just keep going, and you'll find what your purpose and your passion usually are right next to each other. If they're not exactly the same.
Yeah. I just truly appreciate that too, because it's funny, because running is, and I feel, and I mean, maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong. But I feel like most people look for run coaches when they are tackling something like the half marathon or the full marathon. So I really appreciate your emphasis, and I would assume this is just like a very high value for you of like clarity and communication. The C's, clarity, communication, and commitment. Like if you're going to commit to this big goal and you want to work with me, you've got to commit to being open-minded. You've got to commit to trying things that may seem unconventional, but really they're not unconventional when you think about the purpose behind why you're suggesting certain things, right? Like there's usually
Correct.
either an intuitive lived experience that you have, or because there's people don't do 400s just for the sake of doing 400s, right? Like there's usually a purpose
There's
behind
some
it.
science behind it, and I think people
Yeah,
want to know what that is exactly, and especially after a certain amount of time. But it's all part of the process. I think that I always give everyone a lot of credit because I feel that before they've approached me, they've already gone through a lot to get, like, mentally have come to a place of a lot of work to pick up that phone or send that message. Am I right? Like,
I would agree. I would agree. I think for me personally, that's when I reached out to a coach and I started working with a coach, it was because multiple things. One, I was tired of the way I was doing things because it just didn't feel good. I was like, I am not like
you
I
knew there was something better, maybe, and you
there
just
was
didn't
some,
know
yes,
what. Like, they're like, "Hey, white flag, like, help me." Exactly.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then the second part was just, I was tired of trying to figure it out for myself. Like that, it was part of that where I'm like, and I think it's everyone's different, but for me, I was like, I just got to a point, I had been training myself for so long that I got to a point where I was like, all right, I need someone else to tell me what to do. And I just need to show up. Like I have to make so many
Yeah.
decisions in my life. I want someone else who actually enjoys doing that to figure it
Mhm.
out for me. And then my commitment to that is I'm going to give it a try. Whether I nail it perfectly, I'm going to give it a try. And I think that's such a big part of this relationship, too, of, where it's the clear communication that's part of it. And it's that, all right, if I'm going to work with you, it's because I am going to be open to your philosophy, to your method, to your requirements, to your demands, to whatever it is. Like you
Yeah.
you have become a coach in the way that you are a coach and you teach in the way that works, right? And if I'm coming to you, it's because I've seen you and I'm like, you know what? Yes, I want to trust her. I think that's like a big part of it. So I
Absolutely.
really appreciate and I wrote it down here because I love this um how you run with your athletes, right? And you're running with them so that you can see how they run. And then also this beautiful thing of so that you can start to understand their relationship to running. And I think
Yes.
that is so great because again, if we're looking at people who are running or their goal is to run a half marathon or a marathon, I know that you spend a lot of time in your head and that can be, I mean, I've had races where I'm like, oh, training was great and physical.
Yeah.
I was on it. And then I show up on race day. And this happened to me Chicago a few years ago was I woke up and just crazy levels of anxiety. No clue where it came from. Like nothing. I was like, wait, everything was fine. I was fine. I went to bed fine. And that
Yeah.
morning
Yeah.
this. And that right there, it wasn't even what my body could physically do.
No.
It was all about what was happening in my mind.
Yeah. I
So
mean, marathon especially is all mental. I think that the body, we are adaptable creatures. This is how we're made. What you put us in a there's like lab tests, multiple. I read studies, I read and I read and I study the best athletes and I study the best coaches that I personally admire and look at their careers and history, and they all say the same thing. And if your mind is not stronger than your emotions will win every single time. And it's all great to have these huge aspiring goals, but we usually set that standard for ourselves when we're in a very good mood and we're very comfortable. But when push comes to shove and it gets physically hard, where do you tap into? All you've got is up here. This is the boss. This is the control system. Physically, we all know we get to that race. Of course, anything can happen, but you did the training. You did the training. You're there, you're running. So that part of running with them and being there on setting the stage with some really hard circumstances that may or may not happen, you're still setting the stage to deal with mental strength. Yesterday, I did a workout with 3 athletes, and I intentionally did it in a place of hard. Let's just say that. It was dark, it was quiet, we were not on the streets, we were on a gravel kind of surface, sandy gravel, and I whipped up this, totally physically doable for each of them. I'm not even talking like a 400s or 200s things that you have to like put in the anaerobic and go and then stop because you're going so hard. Nobody can, go zone 5 for so long. That's like, you're going to use that in that fight or flight. But it was enough uncomfortableness that a little bit of weakness up here would have slowed them down. So I use these like harder than typical circumstances in training so that you can kind of sharpen the tool in the head. I said to them after, one woman texted me like, wow, that was hard today, but it was good. And I was like, because it was 100% mental. You were in an uncomfortable place physically, but totally doable. These numbers for them, I know can say in great confidence, like they could have done this alone. I didn't need to be there. I don't need to be there. They've done a lot, sometimes the pressure of having your coach there, I always find for myself too, as like I get way too nervous because I want to do so well for them. But it was a nonstop run and we switched paces, but that mental fortitude, that's where that's built. And that is the largest portion of marathon training to me, for me, and as a coach. Now, your body's another thing. That's why the recovery and the strength, but your legs, that's the numbers, right? Like we all have our limit and we set that bar. But generally, I'm telling you from myself and my athletes that bar is bullshit. We can always exceed that far and above and beyond. But someone's got to like break those walls down. And again, I'm the tool. I might be the tool to kind of like get in your head in that moment and say, you got to start asking. Nobody's in there besides you. You got to ask the hard questions. Do I want this? How bad do I want this? It's so a touch on a personal level. So whatever those questions are in that hard moment, are you going to know how to dig deep in that, real estate up here? Like your head, there's a lot of real estate. Like who is taking up space in there? You get to decide, and as soon as that's kind of hands off, that's when each of us can crumble, even in our best physical shape. It's not running is not that. The marathon is the marathon. It's not something to be. Nobody conquers the marathon. It's like there to rip you to your life.
I always say, I'm like, the marathon's a beast and it doesn't care. Like it does not care. It's 26.2 miles and it's unforgiving, like so unforgiving.
Yeah.
And I tell people that too, the longer the distance, and I mean, in all of them, right? It's like the brain your brain, we think that running is all physical and that's what we see. And I'm like, no, no, no. The brain is an even bigger part of it. Like the
Yeah,
brain, I would say it's maybe like 80 to 90% up here and then
I
10% your body.
agree.
You know,
Agreed.
like
100%.
it can change, but I try to tell people that I'm like, and again, for me in my season in life, I'm like, just don't like try not to pay attention to the pace. Try not to do that. Um, and instead, like start building that awareness and that trust with yourself. Like
Right.
feel the run, feel the effort for yourself, feel like I there's this quote years ago I had said it where it's like all I can do is set the stage and hope that grace shows up. So I hear that with this, where it's like, I'm setting the stage. Now you're the one that's got to show up and decide what the cast of characters are going to be. Is the
Yeah.
cast of characters going to be like, yeah, this is hard, but you can keep going? Or is the cast of characters going to include, this is too hard, you just need to stop? Right.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
I feel like, there's studies too, where it's like your brain starts to crash before your body does.
A
And
1000%.
so I really that to me, I just love that because I think it's so important for people to know that what you're committing to when you work with a run coach or when you want to do a full marathon or a half marathon, you're not just committing to doing the miles. Like you are committing, in my opinion, to a whole lifestyle overhaul. Like you have to
Correct.
change the way you are recovering, the way you are strength training. You have to change your relationship to movement, to rest. You
Mhm.
have to change the relationship you have with your self-talk. So it's to me, it's not just here, show up, here's the plan, do it, run, you got it. It's like, no, no,
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that you need to figure out because it's
Right.
going to get hard. Like that's just it. I've yet to hear anybody, even on like their perfect race days where they get the PR and all of that. I have yet to hear them say, like, no, that was completely easy from beginning to end. No,
But
there's always a
that's
point.
not why we do it. I think that there's this like human, the people, the small percentage of people who do marathons, it's like this obsession with this distance and this race because it is so hard. It is so
Yeah.
humbling and exciting, and you really do meet another you on the other side of that. Whatever happened, it's not the 26.2, it's what happened in that time. That's what's gonna
Ugh.
change you, you know?
Yep.
The good, the bad, the ugly, you won't ever go back to that, Jessica that was at the start line when you
No,
crossed that finish line. Like you said, no matter
no.
how good or bad that reflects your race, your PR, it doesn't matter. We
Yeah.
come back for more and more because hey, there's some untapped, I have got some unfinished business, going on there. So you go, people just go back for more and go back.
Oh
So I
yeah.
can see that it's like this almost, it could be a vicious cycle. There's
And,
some
and
down.
listen, after Chicago last year, I said, I am not doing this ever again. Like, we're good. I'm good on the marathon experience. And then I was like, oh, well, London Marathon, 6 star. And I'm like, man, I just complain so much. And yet I keep coming back to it. And I think it's because of what you just said, where it's talk about a process of breaking yourself down and building yourself back up brutally, but beautifully, right? Where you're like, man,
That's what creation, I mean, creation happens after destruction. So
yes.
there's, if you feel that happening or you've experienced it, you can't help but wonder. So even if you don't go back to it per se, or people who do it, there's people who do it once and they just know it's not for them. It doesn't matter, you're never going to be that person again, so it's just, it takes everything and then some, but it always gives more. That's how I feel at the end of it. When I can sit back a month later and like process the race, I can say, I can really look at it for what it is and you can't, I can lie to you here today, but I can't lie to myself. Like
Yep.
you still have to wake up and go to sleep with the same person and of yourself. You look in the mirror every day. So you can it's just too honest, and I just love that piece of it. It creates great relationships because of it, and the honesty between the coach and the athlete. So if that chemistry is there, it's going to be cultivated and rooted, and then hopefully blossom from there. Those are the ideal situations.
Yeah.
In that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I have one final question, and I ask this one all the time because I love this sport. You love this sport. I think everyone should try running. So the question I have is, how can we make running more accessible for people, right? How do we make it feel more inviting? So if there's someone right now that's listening to this that's like, oh, I want to run, but like, I don't know if I can't run more than a block, or I don't think that's for me.
Mm-hmm.
What would your answer be, or what would you tell people?
First of all, if the thought even entered your mind, the only thing holding you back is the fear. So that those doubts are always going to be there. Now, that's kind of where the mental game starts in. So the accessibility for it, and I can only speak from my experience, is that I just decided, I'm not going to do my 6-mile walk today only. I would look at a block in front of me, and this was even over a decade before I would even fathom running with a group. That is intimidating. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I don't think that it is for everyone. I think that we make this monster in our head that doesn't exist, and that is fear, and that is crippling. So, now we have all these social platforms and networks where I think people are tuning in more and realizing, if so and so can do it, I can do it. So the more that you do share your story, Stephanie, my story, Jessica, I think that is the accessibility that people are looking for when it might seem overwhelming. Like maybe they are like, what? Like she walked before she ran? So many people are, I like, you'll never forget the day you ran a mile nonstop. It's not that you just put on your shoes, and you can't understand why everyone doesn't do this. Like that's such bullshit.
Yeah, it is.
I don't think everyone's gonna love it. I wish that everyone would like fall in love with it the way I do. When you hype something up and you're like this restaurant or this movie, and you're like, and then you were like, did you like it? Because you don't want to like
Yeah.
talk.
That's
So,
why I always try to tell people, I'm like, look, I love it. I love running, but the act of it sometimes really sucks. Like, so I always try to tell people, I'm like, it's hard. Like, I will say that there are days where the effort feels easier. It's not that the physical act is easier. At least for me, that's kind of where I try to tell people, I'm like, look, I love it. And yet there are many days where I'm like, oh, I don't want to do it. But then once I'm out there, I'm like, okay, this feels great. Right?
Like, there's never a run. I've never had a run that I regretted.
Right.
Maybe there's definitely been times where I didn't go, and I would say I regret. The days end
Yes.
would come, and I'd be in bed, and I'd be like, like
Yeah.
slapping myself. But
Yep.
once I've never regretted going
Yep.
afterwards. So that's kind of when you know that you're doing the right thing. I think we all have the monkeys in our head, so you have like the devil here, the angel here, and we know instinctually, like it's in our gut. They call it a gut feeling for a reason. That's your intuition. This is where all of who you are and what you know to be exists. And sometimes that can't be put into words, and it's a different feeling for everyone. But if you're hearing those voices and you're still having the doubt, I think that the fear and the doubt of doing something is the exact reason why you should do it. And that it's that simple. Like I wouldn't even over analyze it more than that you don't need to have a special kind of shoe. You don't need to have a special kind of clothing. You don't need to have a special kind of gear. Get the fuck off of Instagram and social media for one day, and you might think of yourself a little bit more highly. It can be toxic. It's just the truth. You can go down the rabbit hole of comparison. I mean, it could be a nightmare, but that's if you let it be. So I think that the act of the movement behind running is what propels the positive feedback and then the positive reinforcement for the person. So if you're listening and you're like, oh, I want to do, and all you can think about is marathon or racing or BQ, that needs to just put that aside, put the shoes on, whatever you have, and go out the door. That's it.
I love that. You're like, so stop thinking and just start doing. And I think that is such a great sentiment to end on, because if you are thinking about it, do it. Like I feel, especially with doubt and fear, those are two little voices that are never going to go away. Like they're going to pop up as often as you give them the space. So I think, if you're thinking about it, go do it. And then even something you alluded to as well is find people to do it with, right? Like you really,
you'll be surprised. They're out there. They're out there. They're waiting for you. They're going to embrace you. They're going to look forward to meeting up with you. And it's not as intimidating as we create. I think that once you put one foot in front of the other, usually whatever we're putting out there, that's what's going to come to us anyway. So you'll end up attracting that same vibe, or that you'll be like, oh, and then the similarities just click. I think that we don't even we don't give ourselves enough credit. So, we're just always listening, like you said, to that doubt and fear, and it's really just it's non-existent. We create it in our mental space. So whenever I'm feeling that way, I replace it with an action. It doesn't mean sometimes I might not even get into the act of going for that run, but I'll do something else. So this morning, like today, I was like, I had like some deep massage yesterday, and I knew the worst thing for me to do is wake up the next day and run, even though I'm rested. Like, it's like I have to fight that urge, and I know it's not the right thing to do, so I'm going to let my body. So I came in my little room here, and I just started like stretching, and I put music on, and I just created a space of movement, and that replaced my urge to do something that I, shouldn't do, or something maybe I need to do, and it actually got the ball rolling on a positive note for the whole day. So I think that instead of it's easier said than done. I think that fear can be paralyzing.
Oh yeah.
And the more that you practice it, the more that you practice the action behind the fear, the easier it will become. It's not easy. It's not. I don't think that's fair to someone who might be listening and thinking like, oh, that's easy for her to say. But I do know for a fact that if you replace any doubt, bad mood, whatever's negative creeping in, and you do some action, whatever you like to. I mean, sometimes I'll start cooking. Sometimes I just will go to like my son's soccer practice instead of like staying home, and whatever it is that I might be feeling some sort of way about, replace it with an action as soon as possible.
Yeah, it's like you're interrupting the cycle, right? You're interrupting that cycle and that spiral, because one thought's going to lead to another, to another, to another.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And
I'm looking forward to hear all the others. I mean, what a great idea.
This is so much joy for me, because everyone is so different. And yet I feel I'm going to make this big assumption now, jumping ahead the entire season, is that what really unites us all is going to be a love of running, and the passion we all feel for spreading running And a lot of, you know, what I heard you say and what I have experienced myself as someone who's been coached is the how it's through this relationship where we can both motivate and inspire one another to go after things that maybe we didn't think was possible. But to what you said, where it's like, if the idea is there, then it is possible. Now it's just a matter of, okay, let's get through all the clutter, or like your metaphor of the alphabet of like, okay, let's kind of like get through these letters and see how do we connect the dots best. And I feel like for anyone who's looking for a coach, that's it. Like that coach, whether it's you or someone else, is there to help connect the dots for you and to give you the tools so that you can do it yourself as well, right? Because again,
Yeah.
you as a
You can't,
coach are
can't run.
only
Yeah.
exactly like you
Yeah.
can, like
Yeah.
you can schedule the most beautiful workouts for people, but if they're not coming to do them, there's only so much you're going to get out of that. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
thank you, Jessica, so much for being on Runners Roundtable. Do you have anything before we officially sign off? Do you have anything that you want to share? Your social media, anything that you want? If people want to follow up, I will put stuff in the show notes, but also for those who are listening or who are going to watch this maybe on YouTube later, anything else, any other way to connect with you?
Yes. Matter of fact, I use Instagram a lot as a ways for communication. It's just accessible for me. So you can find me at justjess77. And through that link, I also have my live with Jess classes. So I do 3 times a week strength training, and that's also a little bit different because I'm with a small group in person and on the screen at the same time. So you have a 1 hour like in-person situation, and then they're recorded and up. So at this point, we're over 350 classes, and it's really cool. It's just something different than I've ever seen before. And I'm not just saying that because I do it, but I can't believe that it's still happening. It really just originated from the pandemic and being out of the gym space and finding other places to work out in small groups, and it just took a life of its own. And it's something I'm very proud of, and I'm proud of how it's just transpired into the media world and in the lives of those who have been a constant there. 8 people, 9 people now, 3 times a week, 1 hour a day, and we are focused more on the individual again than, and there's people in that class that have never ran a day in their life. So it's a whole, strength training has got legs of its own. So that's another world in itself. But I do intertwine the two and find that medium, it really just feeds, one hand feeds the other. So those are just the 2 ways you can contact me or ask me any questions. I'm pretty quick to respond and day of. And thanks again for having me, Steph. I really appreciate your commitment, and it seems like you found your little niche here. I've only been on a couple of podcasts, but I have to say you're good. You're good. You're really good.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I don't want to leave without saying that part. I thought that's super.
Thank you
So
so much. All right, everyone. We'll see you soon.
ciao.